give a warm welcome to the hosts of
The Bride of
Alternate Ending.
Hello, ghouls and goblins, and welcome back to Bride of Alternate Ending. I am Brennan Klein. I'm here, as always, with Tim Brayton. Hello, Tim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you doing, Brennan?
I'm doing reasonably well. I'm feeling good. Did not sleep that well, but not in the way that it would actually impact my life, like the last time I slept 3 hours.
All right, excellent. I never sleep well, so it's an exciting place to be. Welcome to the club.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Anyway, so this is the second episode of whatever month it is, February. Brian Fowler, our Patreon, requested that we cover multi-part sequels, which means movies that are, the third or later in a franchise. And the one that we are covering today is certainly the third or later. It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022.
I wish to disagree with you there. The film very clearly positions itself as the first sequel to 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But it is the third film to be the first sequel to the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I believe it actually might be the fourth film for which that is true. Or no, even the... So there's Texas Chainsaw 2.
Yes.
Presents itself as the original sequel.
Has no choice.
This does. Texas Chainsaw 3D does. Notwithstanding the 3 in its name, does not Leatherface the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 also more or less take place in a continuity where there could not possibly have been a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? It's been some years since I've seen it.
Frankly, it takes place in a continuity where there couldn't possibly have been a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1.
That is an extremely good point, and perhaps does create a wrinkle in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre continuities, of which there have been many.
It is only wrinkles. It's like the face of a pug.
Oh my god! I don't know why that was so funny.
Because it was.
Oh, you might have to cut this part out. I don't know. I need to center myself. Holy shit! It's the way you said the word pug.
Okay, good to know.
It's like the face of a pug, but I can't even do it. Anyway, move on. It's a lot of ins and outs, a lot of complications to the Texas Chainsaw continuity.
Yeah, there's complications galore. We were actually having a debate about this on the Alternate Ending Discord server, but I actually appreciate the grammatical complexity of the Texas Chainsaw franchise, because each movie, even though they all have the same title, it's grammatically distinct in a minor way.
Yep.
So we are talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's not to be confused with Texas Chainsaw, which is the 2013 film, or The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is the 2003 remake, or The Texas Chain Space Saw Massacre, which is the original.
Indeed. Although, if my recollection serves, and it very well might not, I believe the Texas Chain Space Saw Massacre may or may not have that space, depending on whether you're going by the advertising or the on-screen title.
That is very true, but that's just yet another wrinkle in this beautiful mosaic.
I love it.
Anyway, so this film essentially is positioned as a kind of Halloween 2018 style legacy sequel. Oh boy.
It is shockingly overt in its desire to be Halloween 2018 for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right down to the way that it has applied hair and makeup to its legacy character, who is not a legacy actor.
Yes, the legacy character in this case is the sole survivor of the original film, Sally Hardesty, originally played by Marilyn Burns, who passed away in 2014, I think.
14, yeah.
She is now played by Olwen Fuere, who's an Irish actor. She was in Mandy. She played Mother Marlene in Mandy.
Oh, I hadn't picked that up. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's an awesome thing that she's done. This is not. We are we'll get there. But yes, Sally Hardesty is present. She's trying to be the kind of wizened survivor Jamie Lee Curtis like ready to murder Leatherface. She's apparently been a Texas Ranger now for like 40 years because she is the Lefty Enright from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And I would say is the least functional part of a narrative that has no interest in being functional.
I would say that most of the narrative's dysfunction is the dysfunction that is natural to the genre of the post-1980 slasher film. Her dysfunction is a special and unique kind of... This movie was actually not as bad as it could have been, so let's make sure we put something in it that's just really irredeemably fucking terrible, just to make sure that it's unnecessarily hard to watch this movie.
Yeah, and
to me.
Yeah, and I wanna like kind of keep the veil drawn for a moment because most of her material is in the third act, and we are gonna like try to cover a bit before we dive into spoiler territory because this movie just came out. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix origi.
Don't ever say that again, or I will fly out to California and I will slap you.
Please, look, I'm starved for human contact, so I'll just keep
Okay.
saying. But yes, it's directed by David Blue Garcia, whose previous film is called Tejano. So they were like, Texas, let's make it happen. Written
and apparently replaced the first directors, a directing duo who were fired after the first week for not matching producer Fede Alvarez's vision for this project.
Okay. Fede Alvarez, a filmmaker who has made a remake that is generally received as successful in a movie that I like but wouldn't be over the moon for, which is Evil Dead 2013.
Yeah, I have not yet seen the Fede Alvarez film that made me feel, yes, this person is a visionary, which I think there's like there's a vibe that we're supposed to be excited by him, and I'm not there yet. I don't think.
Yeah, and this movie certainly wouldn't push you any further into that arena. Although I will say, in my professional capacity as a news writer at Screen Rant, I wrote about quotes from an interview that was that he performed, in which he basically said that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, it is essentially just a sequel to the first one, but he hasn't canonically discounted any of the other movies, but he just like, fuck, how could you include them? Because
yeah, right, like just because you don't have a character walk out in front of the camera and say, the like X never happened, it is very clear in this movie's backstory that Leatherface, whose name is said as Leatherface out loud in front of a camera, and I'm sure that's happened before in any of the previous 8 films in this franchise, but when it happened, it still felt very, like, funky to me. I don't know.
Yeah, he's called, in the first one, he's called Leather by his family, and then he's credited as Leatherface, and I think that's how it goes.
Okay. Point being, it has been, at this point, some 50 years since the events of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the implication is very clearly that nothing has happened since then involving chainsaws or massacres or families of cannibals out in the Texas wilderness, so it would be very difficult to fit any of the other films into this continuity, I think.
Yes, very much so. And this is a much more believable source of... first of all, obviously it's a source of trauma for Sally Hardesty's character. She is, doing that Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween 2018 thing. But also it is kind of a true crime gimmick for the towns in Texas where they're, selling, like, chainsaw-shaped corkscrews and, things like that. Just very touristy stuff. Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot more sense than the Halloween 2018 version, which is that Michael Myers killed 3 people 40 years ago and people are still mad about it.
Right. No, very, very much so. It feels in keeping with the kind of small town America that these films, and particularly this film, very much explicitly as part of its plot, sort of foreground as their setting and their mood.
Yeah, and even taking into the first film into the only that one into the equation, it is one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of human history.
It is indeed.
But anyway, so basically what we have sisters Mel and Lila. Mel is played by Sarah Yarkin, who allegedly is in Happy Death Day to You, but I do not recall having seen her before. And Lila, played by Elsie Fisher from 8th grade, who I do remember because I liked her performance quite a bit in 8th grade.
Agreed, yes. It felt very unexpected to me to see that this is where her agent decided she needed to go.
Yes.
Based on that momentum.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing. I think maybe this is a let's see what job a teen can get during the pandemic kind of situation.
That seems wholly possible. Yeah.
Because I don't know if she's done anything between 8th grade and now, but this is at least the next biggest thing she has done.
I'm going to, just out of curiosity, pull that up because I want her to have done something between 8th grade and now.
Yeah, me too. But maybe she was actually doing, 8th grade. Like just...
Oh, apparently she's on that TV show Castle Rock.
Oh! A TV show that I'm not fully convinced exists, but good for her.
Yes. It does suggest why there seemed to be a natural step into this. If her thing is like, we're going to position you as a new Scream Queen. Which I think Castle Rock is horror-based, yes?
Yes, it's based on, like, the Stephen King Apocrypha.
But it could have been based on, like, Stephen King's stories about baseball and cars. It doesn't have to be based on Stephen King's horror, which is why I asked the question.
Mm-hmm. But he likes to mash them all up together anyway.
That's true. That's true.
But anyway, so
they got sisters.
Yeah, we got two sisters. Lila is... See, okay, so Sarah Yarkin is credited first. So going into this movie, I assumed that Elsie Fisher would probably get murdered with a chainsaw at some point. But the second she reveals that she has a dark backstory and a scar, I'm like, oh, this girl's gonna see the end credits of this movie.
Yep, it is a film that is playing very much by the rule book. Like, it is clear within 60 seconds, not merely who the final girl is, but really the order in which the other characters will be killed.
Oh, absolutely, and that's not a knock against the movie.
No.
But yeah, no, it's totally easy, especially in the way that this movie is trying to be topical and modern and not doing any of that very well. We were like, okay, so this couple is obviously disposable meat, but they don't want to kill the black guy first, so they're gonna kill the blonde girl first and then him. Mm-hmm. It's an easy equation to work out immediately.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, what, Tim?
No, I was just gonna say, which kind of going back to your point, I actually liked about it. It was very, and we'll get there as well. I found this very, like, put on your pajamas, drink tea, and watch a slasher movie, sort of comfort food slasher movie. Especially in this first act.
Yeah, it's just, there is absolutely nothing wrong with playing to formula. I wouldn't say this movie is, because there are movies that do that and also excel and are just terrific movies, and this isn't that, but this is just that, if this is a formula that you like, it will deliver enough of the things that it won't be a completely miserable experience. But yeah, and I think that there's a lot of power in that. We human beings were very ritual-based creatures. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so Lila, another way this movie is topical, she is the survivor of a school shooting, an incredibly poorly integrated school shooting. That is, if anything, it makes everything about her arc worse.
It makes everything about her arc worse. And if you imagine the worst case scenario for the level of delicacy with which a school shooting can be worked into a slasher film visually, you've probably more or less nailed it. Like, I won't say it's worse than you could imagine, but it's a moment later in the film, so we'll get to it when we talk spoilery, I think.
Yes.
But,
I have there's a big glowing neon sign of, I need to talk about this later on.
I bet anything we're thinking about the same thing.
Hopefully. I hope we're thinking about different things. We have stuff to bring to the table. All
right.
Anyway, so essentially Mel has kind of dragged Lila along on this trip. She and her cooking partner, Dante.
Well, continue. I don't want to stop you every clause.
No, do it.
So she and Dante, for the record, is played by Jacob Lattimore,
mm-hmm.
are going to this small abandoned town,
Harlow,
in Texas. And as you say, they are restaurateurs. They have a food truck, because there's a line of dialogue where she's like, "We could rent this entire block for less than it costs us to park our food truck," which again, topical. But they also seem to be venture capitalists, because it seems that they have purchased this entire town and are now selling it.
Yeah, they have done this somehow, and they are trying to create a kind of commune, a non-violent commune of hipsters, essentially.
A non-violent commune of hipsters, all of whom seem to want to open like brunch shops. Like, it's not a commune of people who want to like live off the grid and plant shit. It really does appear to be like, we want to move a commercial district from Williamsburg into this small Texas town. It's very confusing to me. The economics of it make no sense. Who is like a mover and shaker makes sense, because there's only really, it can only be those two. But like, why are they both food truck owners but also these like ingenious real estate developers?
Yeah, it literally everything about this setup is perplexing. Up to and including the bank lady who arranges a bus full of investors, quote unquote investors. But
then they're not investors. Then it's like an auction.
Yeah,
right?
It's like an auction of the buildings, but they don't seem to be fully clear on which buildings they actually own.
Right.
And so just everything about this top to bottom is this kind of Byzantine disaster.
And that's even overlooking sort of the question of all, which is the whole thing here is they want to create this Austin-like hipster commune in the middle of the Texas Panhandle, or wherever we're meant to be. Who would want to move there?
Yeah. And you're only selling to each other, I guess, or tourists in deep Texas? Yeah, it's deeply confusing, and this movie attempt, in one of its many topical jaunts, it tries to have something to say about gentrifying. But gentrifying ghost towns, not a real problem the world has.
No, and that's another. God damn it! So another thing that goes on is like when they arrive and all of the locals are like very grumpy that they're there to gentrify, and one of them uses the very cunningly constructed slur gentrifuckers.
He's a cunning linguist.
He is. But then we are also very expressly told that this town has been abandoned. So who's mad? Like, are they the next town over? Are they the descendants of the people from this town? Like, why is the gas station attendant who gets real pissed off when they stop in the store, what does it possibly matter to him?
Yeah, this is never satisfactorily answered, and then they do a thing where they kick the Borg Queen out of an orphanage where she lives, and that has something to do with gentrifying, because like, oh, we displaced a poor person from their house in a ghost town though, and they didn't seem to know that she was there. It's really, really a problem.
It is very confusing, and not even confusing because it's convoluted. Confusing because it's just like every scene we get a new chunk of data that doesn't wedge in with the data we've been given.
Yeah, and none of which wedges in with any sort of thing that would ever happen on this planet. Exactly. But anyway, so essentially they kick out this lady who owns an orphanage, and she has one tenant who my boyfriend Ben hilariously described as an adult orphan. Who, guess what, turns out to be Leatherface. Okay. There's a picture of a group of orphans, and Leatherface is clearly like lurking in the shadows of a doorway in the background.
Oh yes, and he is over his face. The picture frame or the glass has cracked, so his face has been obscured.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's if you're gonna be a sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw, why this? Why this thing?
Why this thing? Because it was very strange to me. Because the one thing that Leatherface has never had, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't seen some of these movies in quite a while, there's never been a mother figure. Like, the mother is always the absent member of whatever version of the cannibal family we've assembled. Is that correct?
I am 90% certain that it is. There are definitely women in some of the families, but his mother is not usually around.
Right. So this is not a Jason Voorhees character. He's not always on the lookout for a new mother figure. And to sort of speed up the plot recap a little bit, what happens is that after Dante evicts the old woman, she immediately has a heart attack, like right there on the spot while they're talking, and then dies. And so it is very clearly, I think, suggested that Leatherface's rampage is to get revenge for her in this mother figure capacity, which is just simply not at all what I would expect, even just based on the first movie. That's not part of his like package of things that make him the character that he is, that he would do that kind of thing.
Yeah, they definitely recognize that Leatherface is one of the more sympathetic slasher villains, because especially in the first one, he's just defending his house from these people who keep wandering in, and he's terrified of them. And so he's a rather interesting character, and they were like, we'll do that, but just make it really strange and not square with anything. And also, if he was a kid at this orphanage, why does he have a family that he's with in the 70s? And just none of it makes any sense.
I mean, I gathered that it was at some point in the 70s the family died. I don't know. And he wandered into town and was then taken up in this orphanage when he was 25.
Oh, okay.
Or whatever.
I got the sense from the picture that he was one of the kids, but maybe my scale was kind of off. Maybe he was like
I don't know.
grown.
The picture made it look like he was twice as big as everybody else, but also the point could be that he's just a giant goddamn dude and always has been since he was a kid.
Yeah, I don't know. Unclear, but again,
Unclear. But long story short, he decides to get revenge because they kill the old lady accidentally.
Yeah, so he kills much of the main cast, and basically he kills everyone in the movie, which is something I appreciate.
Yes, the entire bus full of investors ends up dead. Every cop we see, I think, ends up dead.
Yeah, the
not every incidental character ends up dead. I don't believe the gas station owner ends up dead, but the other local redneck they meet ends up dead.
Yeah, basically all but one person who steps foot in Harlow
Yes.
is deadified. And that's really not even a spoiler either, but should we start getting into more spoilery territory?
I mean, I think we better just lay out the spoiler blanket at this point in case we trip over something.
Yeah.
I don't have any immediate desire to go into the actual spoilery stuff yet, but I think, we might say something like if we start describing a death and someone's like, but I want to go in, I want to see the deaths fresh and pure. I don't want to steal that possibility away from anybody.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, we will. Yeah, we're not gonna like full spoil the plot quite yet, but just it'll happen in the future, and we're not gonna mark it afterwards.
I like it.
But yes, so we already began. How do you feel about Leatherface this time around? Otherwise, like I personally don't love his look on this one, but his look usually isn't great in these sequels anyway.
I mean, the thing about Leatherface is I think he's very. The look in principle is cool, but the look, I think, in practice has not yet been executed well, and I think the only reason it feels more or less like it was executed well in the 74 film is that the 16mm cinematography was just so shitty, really. And I mean, it's well done, shitty 16mm cinematography. It covers up the lapse in the prosthetic and the mask he's wearing. But I think the clearer we can see the mask, which has been true more so of every sequel than the original, The worse it looks. And in this case, I think they really, really want to showcase the mask, and that was a mistake.
Absolutely a mistake, and especially because Leatherface is a chainsaw forward character anyway. Like the mask is a more incidental piece of his iconography. Especially because in the first one, even he changes his mask. He has different ones.
Yeah, exactly. I would even go so far as to say that the leather apron is a more important part of his iconography.
Oh yeah,
which he does end up wearing.
Yes. Yeah. So that's something. But Leatherface, we already talked about the ways in which they kind of fucked with this story, and sequels are gonna do that. This movie really thrives on the fact that it's impossible to be more stupid than Texas Chainsaw 3D. So in comparison, it really shines.
I agree with that. That is the specific film that I was most comparing it to mentally. Because it's to me the newest. I still haven't seen 2017's Leatherface, which I believe is a prequel to the 74 film in the continuity of Texas Chainsaw 3D. I haven't seen it, so I don't know that for a fact.
I think so, because I think they used the last name that's introduced in that movie. It's really not worth thinking too hard about.
Right. I mean, it's nuts. But
that one, Leatherface has a mother figure in that exact movie.
Okay, there you go. So maybe that's just the new 21st century Texas Chainsaw is going to involve more mother figures.
Great.
I love it. But no, so I was very directly comparing it to Texas Chainsaw 3D, and it certainly benefits from that comparison. And I'll one-up you and say even Texas Chainsaw 3D benefits from a comparison to Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. So we're clearly not talking about a franchise that has avoided just the complete depths of the stupidest kind of slasher plotting in the past.
And I have a lot of fondness for Texas Chainsaw 3D and all of its stupid twists and turns.
Fair enough. I don't, but I respect that you do.
No, that's fair, but I really love a movie that posits that there is a baby in 1974 who grows up and in 2013 is a 26-year-old Alexander Daddario.
That is a good point. And I will also always have to thank Texas Chainsaw 3D for being the first movie where I saw CGI blood effects so bad that they made me realize that CGI blood effects were now like part of what people did.
Anyway, what a mess. We're not here to talk about that movie, though, as much as I wish we were sometimes. Let's talk about the kills. I think there's one kill that's like a standout above all, but
I had one kill I loved, one kill I liked a lot, and no kills that I was disappointed by.
I'm right there with you. I think the main body count kills are a little... They're solid, but they're less exciting than the best kills. For the most part. I think... You agree?
No, I would mostly agree. There's one body count kill that I almost like, except that I think the CG, actually. I believe it's CG. The effects let it down a little bit. I otherwise like it, but let's and I guess depending on how you'd find main body count kill, the one that I really, really love might qualify as a main body count kill.
Okay, well, let's start. The one that I really, really love is, I believe, the first kill. It's the cop that Leatherface. Yep, that's the one.
That was mine too. That's how can it not be your favorite?
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's clever. It's using every part of the buffalo.
It's very efficient.
Yeah, so Leatherface snaps this cop's wrist so the bone is protruding and then uses that bone to stab him in the neck. It is clever, it's gross as hell. It is a very good kill.
It's one of those moments where you realize that you assume that we've done everything with art. It's like when they invent 12-tone music. You're like, oh wow, there's an entire new like world that we're not dabbling in here that we could have been. It's such an exciting moment to me to see this death. It's like the first super cool death I've seen in a long time.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, it is one of those things like you do feel like everything has been done and it just hasn't been. And that is really electrifying and gives you a lot of energy, and unfortunately none of the kills reach that height, but how could they?
Right, because every other kill we see is I want to say every other one is a variation on a kill we've seen in this franchise, but that might not be completely true. But certainly every one of them is a variation on a kill we've seen.
Certainly, and a lot of them are interested in doing other things. Like Dante's kill, he's killed with he's like attacked with a cleaver, and you end up seeing his jaw kind of cracked open, which is a okay effect. But that kill is more about the way that
The
kill is
swinging kitchen
shot.
door.
Yeah, because you're seeing it in these little snatches through a door that's swinging shut, and that's I think a good visual idea, but it's not gory in the moment.
And I agree with that, and I don't need it to be gory in the moment because it is a cool idea.
Yeah.
It is not completely carried off. The door, and I don't know if this was an accident they realized and they adjusted for it, or if it's just like this was always the plan. The door swings less and less every time. So in order to clearly show us what's happening, like at the last swing, they actually cut in to show like a close-up of him with like blood gushing out of wherever. And then it cuts back to the door swinging closed. And that to me felt like an after the fact, oh God, we didn't actually show what we needed to show. We need to cut it in. I was bummed out that they had to cut during it. And it's probably worth pointing out that even the best version of this effect is still... Saying it's a ripoff of Hitchcock's Rope is probably uncharitable to the filmmakers. I'm sure that that's not like where they were coming from, but it is an effect that was used in Rope, and it's hard for me not to see that film in any subsequent attempt to do this gimmick.
I totally hear you there. Will you allow me an extreme diversion for 20 seconds?
Of course I will.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a review pending on Alternate Ending of a rom-com called I Want You Back. And
to be clear, by the time this episode goes live, that review will no longer be pending.
yes, hopefully. Because it'll be like a week from when we record it.
Unless I need to like go over every single word you typed with a very angry red felt pen, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. But yes, so this movie features a scene in which Jenny Slate impresses a potential lover with her performance of a musical theater song, and that song is Suddenly Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors. And I'm like, excuse me, I don't know why you think I would be impressed by anything that is not Ellen Greene singing Suddenly Seymour, because we have that on film, and it's available for the public, and that's the only version of that I will ever need. So
that's yes. You both simultaneously made me want to see this movie more because clearly their music supervisor has good taste, and less because that scene's not going to play.
No, and it doesn't. Like, I think Jenny Slate is great in the movie, and the scene is fine. It's very... The things around it are funny because she's a stand-in for a middle school performer, so her Seymour is like a 13-year-old boy, and that's pretty funny.
Okay.
But, like, us having to think that she is good at singing Suddenly Seymour, no one can be.
Sure.
Anyway, so yeah, that kill, I agree with you. It does diminish in comparison, and there are certain.
It's 80% of where it needs to be, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah. So what's the kill that you thought was like the second tier, like that good kill?
So for me, the good kill is, so there's kind of an interesting way this is structured, and I don't know if they've quite worked out the implications of it. But basically, what happens is it becomes unpleasantly plausible that, in fact, they did not own this house. And
yes.
Therefore, they go back into it to try and find the deed. Which I think raises its own set of problems in that, how do you not know that?
Yeah, because they're selling off all the buildings in this town. It doesn't make sense that they wouldn't, or that they would buy a town and leave one person living there.
And I mean, if the idea here is that our restaurateur heroes are such in over their head hipsters that they think, ooh, this would be a cool idea, and then they prove wholly incapable of dealing with the practical ramifications of that. And it could very well be that is the actual specific point of doing this. Then sure. but I don't get the feeling that we're supposed to view these people as blithering incompetents, just sort of in over their head. Sure, setting that aside, Dante and Melody rather go into the house and are hunting around, and Leatherface comes upon them. So Dante dies fairly quickly, whereas Mel spends the next 8 hours lying under a bed. Mm-hmm. It's not clear.
She does
how long she's there.
She does briefly move from the closet to the bed, but yeah, she is in that room for as long as possible.
It is the sunlight goes from early afternoon to not earlier than dusk while she is hiding under this bed. Yeah. And she hears him leave the house and chooses to stay under the bed while she knows for a fact that he's not in the house.
Yeah, no, people make a lot of bad decisions vis-a-vis the geography of Leatherface in this movie.
They for sure.
Wait, what's the kill that you were talking about?
Oh, so the kill. Yes, the redneck who has previously been sort of unpleasant and clearly racist and what have you, comes in and she finds a way to sort of move a mirror to show him that Leatherface is hiding around a corner. He sees Leatherface and attempts to best him but fails. And then Leatherface pounds his skull in with a hammer. And I think it's just a very gory and ooky and delightful amount of caved-in skull that we see.
Yes, that's very true. And it's part of a longer sequence, too, because that kill also involves a shard of a window being driven into this man's head. And so the man has fallen onto the floor, and the hammer kill is also kind of a shock gag too, because you think he's already dead, and then Leatherface comes in for the full-on double tap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks to this movie. It has a modicum of tension. There is an amount. I was never scared during it, but when the blonde girl is in the car, and you're like, well, which side of the car is Leatherface on? It's at least functional in a way that is engaging.
It's solid suspense. I did not have any doubt how the scene was going to play out, down to the level of so there's going to be a scene where she's in the foreground and she moves to one side or the other, and we'll see Leatherface behind her. Lo and behold, that shot happens. Yeah. So it's not reinventing any wheels, but I think it is very solid at getting at that sort of ooh, where is he? Spooky thriller quality that, again, there's no such thing as a scary slasher movie. They just don't exist. But there are tense ones. And I think this has a couple tense moments. That's one of them. I do think bits and pieces of the ongoing saga of Mel in the bedroom have tension to them. The whole thing is too long to sustain itself, but there are bits of it that are good.
Yes, absolutely. And the grand climax of Mel, so basically my favorite, I guess, effects moment that's not a kill. She's finally sneaking out of that goddamn bedroom and makes the patently bizarre decision to leap over a railing to the stairwell that she could have just rounded a corner to do instead. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, Leatherface appears behind her, smacks her in the tummy with a hammer, and she crashes through the floor into the under space of the house, and that is a very fun moment.
It is. I enjoyed it enough to overlook what dumb screenwriting it was.
Oh yeah, it all is really stupid. But then
the film is never smart, but sometimes its dumbness is sort of feisty in I'm watching a slasher sort of way, as opposed to oh god, this is making me feel like my brain is rotting in my skull.
Yes, and this is one of the nicer moments. But then, of course, so a lot of the tension that they're building is a character with a limited perspective, not knowing where the killer is, and then things go blah. And that under the floor sequence is pretty solid in accomplishing that, and a lot tighter than her hiding from Leatherface in the room.
Absolutely.
Is there? Yeah.
What was your other good kill?
I think we covered everything. I think
I thought you also had two.
The wrist kill was just really the one that I liked the most, and then the other ones were just kind of varying degrees of all right. I don't hate anything.
Okay. There is a chainsaw from the upper left shoulder down to the right side of the waistline kill, that is certainly not new. Like, we've all seen people being bisected diagonally in slasher movies, but I thought it was a well done version of that kill.
Yeah, it's well done. That's part of the overall bus massacre, correct?
Yes, and it is, to me, the highlight of the bus massacre. Although I think the bus massacre is itself a highlight.
Yeah, I actually don't fully agree with you there, but for reasons that are more personal, I guess. First of all, I think it's a little underlit. I was hoping for a little more like specificity to the mayhem that you could see and clearly parse out. But I was very happy that it happened. The kind of like hands pounding against the back window of the bus is a cool shot. But for me, any shot that's like very lightning or strobe heavy is not one that I can really watch with my photosensitivity.
Oh, of course, that makes sense.
So well, I mean, especially because I was watching this on my computer because I was watching it on Netflix Party with Ben. So I had the ability to turn down my brightness and kind of like squint through it.
Well, that's why I think it was underlit.
Well, no, it was underlit before that.
It was also underlit.
But so it is not the movie's fault that it decides to do this, but it does prevent me from making a scene totally legible, but also from what I could see, it was a little chaotically edited.
It is, although my feeling is that the moments that it wants you to be like, ew, it lingers on, such as man being bisected diagonally.
Yes. No, yeah, that part's a great moment, and then the woman who's climbing out the window and gets chainsawed in half is a good moment.
Exactly. Because, he's at this point killing like 20 people, so they have to get through them fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Which also, to be clear, not Leatherface behavior. If this is a Friday the 13th, then I'm all about seeing him kill a bus full of people. Here, it doesn't make sense given what this franchise is, given who this character is, given what the plot of this movie is. But I feel like by the point we've gotten to the bus scene, I have been so thoroughly disabused of any notion that this will be a good Texas Chainsaw Massacre that I'm not fluffed about that.
No, absolutely. And it's very reminiscent of the scene in Freddy vs. Jason where Jason kills a bunch of people at a cornfield rave. Which I was kind of hoping it would be, because there was this bus full of asshole hipsters, and I was like, I hope they all die, please.
Yeah.
So that was very satisfying and very nice. Let's talk about Sally Hardesty.
Okay. Let's do that.
So here's the thing. You can't ruin the character of Sally Hardesty, because Sally Hardesty is not a character.
She's not a character.
She is a totem of terror.
The original film has, I think, so many strengths. It is one of my favorite horror movies. But one of its strengths is not character writing. Of the 5 teens who become menaced by Leatherface and his family, the only one who has any personality is Franklin, Sally's brother. And that personality in large part consists of he's the one in a wheelchair, so it's easier to pick him out in a crowd shot.
I would say he has a lot of dimensions to his character, mainly that he's
also a
intolerable.
giant
Yeah. But yeah, but he's also like, never mind. I just rewatched the first one, so I could talk about that for 8 hours. But yes, but here's the thing. In spite of that, they do ruin the character of Sally Hardesty in this movie.
I know, right? Like, so we don't know anything about who she is. We don't know where she's coming from. We don't know what her dreams and hopes are. I never, ever would have said, based on what little we see in the 74 film, here is a person with the chops to become a Texas Ranger.
Yes.
Or the geographical ties to Texas to become a Texas Ranger.
Yeah, because you're right, because we don't know anything about her. But even of the tiny sliver of things that we do know from the original Texas Chainsaw, this just fucks those right up too.
Right.
So she makes the truly baffling decision to point a gun at Leatherface, list the names of the people, her friends that she killed. I was actually, the first time she showed up and she was being all grizzled and angry, I was like, I hope she has a moment where she's like, this is for Franklin, because that would be the stupidest thing. And then she does that. But she points a gun at Leatherface and she's like, say my name. Like, tell me you remember me. And I'm like, first of all, you're not Destiny's Child. Second of all, from the two things you should know. First of all, they never asked your name. They have no reason to know it. Second of all, Leatherface cannot talk.
Right?
What the fuck?
He is an inarticulate man-child who bellows. That's his thing.
Yeah, I was like, you were there. Like, she spent hours with this man, never heard him utter a single word.
To be fair, we only see about 30 minutes of the time she spends with him, perhaps in one of the scenes elsewhere in the narrative, not present in the film's narrative, but in the sort of narrative universe. Maybe he's reading to her out of a Trollope novel.
Maybe. He's like, this is my favorite chapter in the Canterbury Tales. You never know. I know that's not Trollope. I was making a separate joke that was just a worse version of your joke. So,
you know, my joke, in the spur of the moment, I was between Trollope and Chaucer and went with Trollope, but we were in the same
exactly
headspace. I like it.
But anyway, so it's just a really stupid thing, and then she just lets him leave to go murder some more people because he doesn't say her name. She also has this stupid thing where she discovers that he has made a kind of art piece out of the corpse of the blonde girl, a la the opening of the original Texas Chainsaw. And she starts muttering, like, I fear no evil, I live no evil, or whatever. And it's like...
Right? What was that? Like, what is that even in reference to? I mean, I get that it's in reference to, like, people who are religious, chanting when they... whatever. How is that in any way attached to the first movie? No,
it's not. And also, I don't think it's specifically religious. At least fear no evil.
No, it's not. It's sort of biblical language, but it's not specifically.
Yeah, it's biblical language, but it's kind of like an off-brand, like dollar store version of the Bible or a prayer, and so it just the galaxy brain fuckery of this character is really hard to stomach.
It's astonishing, and that's even setting aside like where the plot goes with this character, which is worse.
Let's go there.
Even still. So basically, as you say, she has not that much to do in this film. She shows up, she sees the totem, she mumbles and mutters and is angry. And then she sees Leatherface and she holds him at gunpoint and insists that he says her name, and then he doesn't. She sort of drifts away and lets him kill a bunch more.
Also, and that scene really plays off on, like, you forgot our anniversary, babe.
And the next time we see her is in the showdown where she ends up getting, like, hoist on a chainsaw and killed. And that's it. That's her function in this plot, is to do those three things.
She does shoot at Leatherface later from a pile of garbage.
She does do that.
Before she goes, eh.
But yes, she does. So after she has had a chainsaw in her guts for about 20 seconds, she's able to both aim a gun, shoot him, and articulate a catchphrase before she dies.
Thank God.
And this all happens like 10 minutes after she has had a chainsaw in her bowels.
Yeah, it's it's mystifying. They
and again, I will go ahead.
No, you go.
I cannot overstate how very obviously when they put poor Olin Foray into hair and makeup, they told the hair and makeup artist, make her look like Jamie Lee Curtis in the 2018 Halloween.
Yeah, like long, stringy gray hair.
It's like shameless how much that is clearly what they were going for.
Oh, yeah, it is. But also, she's made up the exact same way as the old lady they kick out of the house, too, which is a very random choice.
Yes.
But yeah, so she's supposed to be kind of like... Well, I mean, I think Halloween 2018 fails at this, too. But she's supposed to be kind of like this Linda Hamilton avenging angel of the franchise. And Sally Hardesty should never have been that. She's never built to do that.
It's nonsensical, and like I forget which one of it, if is it 2 that sort of very quickly wraps her up in like a news article, which they do here. They have like people are watching news stories about what happened in 74. But in one of the films, one of the sequels, it's implied that she basically gave her story and just like fucked the fuck back to New York, wherever she came from, and just like lived quietly where she would never be bothered by the media or killers with chainsaws again.
I think so. And one of them specifically says that she died too. That might have been the second one.
That's right, because that's one of the reasons that the sequels are not in continuity with each other, because I think actually that there are incompatible stories of what happened to her in the sequels.
Exactly. But I just gotta say, because Marilyn Burns had proven throughout her career that she was not afraid of returning to the Texas Chainsaw franchise. She made 2 cameos. She had a cameo in the end of The Next Generation, and she had a cameo in the beginning of Texas Chainsaw 3D. And I am just so glad they did not drag her. I mean, obviously she passed away, and I'm
exceptionally glad they did not drag her in front of their cameras in that case.
Yes, but it's like,
you can just imagine some horrible producer being like, "You guys have a great idea for what we can do for one of Leatherface's like corpse totems."
Oh my god, absolutely. I mean, they got the chainsaw from the original movies.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But it's like, I am obviously not glad that Marilyn Burns is dead, but I am very glad that there is no way in the universe that it was her in that role.
If she hadn't been dead, seeing this movie would have killed her. But yeah, so that's awful. And also, going into sort of the nitty-gritty nitpicking part of the backstory here, first off, when we are getting that news report about what happened, and this is such a tiny thing to have stuck in my craw, but so they're watching the news report of, oh my god, this single survivor. The news reader suggests that based on her eyewitness testimony, the police released this composite image of the killer, and it's not a composite image if it's only one person talking about what the person looked like. That's what makes it a composite image, that is multiple people.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So that just got up my ass for no reason. But the other thing, we are told that she has spent the last 50 years obsessively, Ahab-like, trying to find Leatherface so she can kill him. Again, no, she didn't. That's not where we left things in 1974. But okay, this film needs her to have done that. Sure, fine, whatever. He spent apparently a lot of those 50 years on the second floor of this orphanage. So she wasn't looking very hard, because he's not been like moving.
Yeah, no, she did not really try that hard. I mean, she is out of her mind. But speaking of the narrator of the composite image moment, that is John Larroquette doing it again.
I thought it was a very terrible John Larroquette impersonator till I saw his name in the credits, and I realized that it's just that John Larroquette's old now.
Yep. But yeah, so yeah, everything to do with Sally and Leatherface is very random. Leatherface is the only character that you can actually like actively undermine as far as the first film, but like Sally, the choices they make are so batshit. And then I guess let's talk about Elsie Fisher's arc. That's the thing that I really wanted to put that neon sign on. So this movie takes the approach to mental health that a lot of movies do, which is that if you've gone through a trauma, if you do another one, that'll fix you right up.
More or less expressly. So the one thing I wanted to bring up, there's a shot, I think it's in the bus, where she's like on the ground and she sees all of Leatherface's bodies like scattered out across the space. And she has a flashback to when she was lying, pretending to be dead during the school shooting, looking at all of the dead bodies scattered throughout the hallway. And it's just such a... crass isn't a big enough word for it.
It's so vulgar.
It's vulgar. That's a good word.
Thank you.
It is very just... It is tasteless in the most shocking, ham-fisted way possible.
Yeah, it's really, really troubling, and especially because we spent a lot of time in the first act detailing this character's relationship with firearms, and then of course she has to pick up a gun to shoot Leatherface at the end, and that's supposedly her coming full circle, and that's just like politically a really strange arc to include, and character-wise, it's just, I mean, look, movies have been doing this forever. Action and horror movies have a really hard time parsing out how it's cool to watch gunshot wounds in special effects and guns equals also bad. But it also adds on that thing of like, your trauma is cured because, well, we haven't talked about this yet, but she watches her sister get killed in front of her or whatever. Although that's not, never mind. Sorry, I'm just yammering.
Her trauma would appear to have been cured before that
Yes.
happens, and then I believe she has she has been she has a new trauma.
Yes.
To replace the old trauma.
But yeah, it's really bizarre. It actually, I guess, spoiler alert for Steven Soderbergh's Kimmy slightly. It has the exact same arc for her, which is also annoying to me. Where it's like, your agoraphobia is cured by terrible things happening to you. And it's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it is, I mean, there's a certain level of movie logic, and there's one thing that I do think they did to try and sell at least the gun part of the arc. Obviously, they can't sell the school shooting trauma part of the arc. The first time she has a flashback to the shooting, she is talking to the redneck garage owner, the one who will later have a hammer put in his skull, and she doesn't really realize what's going on until she realizes she has picked up an assault rifle and is aiming it. So that at least sells to me there's this like part of her that does want to grab a gun and kill all the bad people,
like a morbid fascination.
At least they've seeded it.
Yes.
I think at that point, because the implication of that moment is that she doesn't literally realize she has done this. Like, she's picked up the gun and aimed it without even sort of being cognizant of it. Whether that seeds it well is a different question. I think the answer is, of course, no, it doesn't. But at least it's not something that's come out of the clear blue sky.
No, you're right about that. And that's, I guess, less my complaint about her arc than more just like just how horribly
the getting over trauma by going through another one is dumb as shit. But also, it's a horror
yeah.
movie. It's gonna do that.
No, it is.
Horror movies have been doing that for a long time.
No, that's very true. It's just the fact that it is a school shooting, I think, is what makes it extra poisonous.
Sure.
Because that is a look. I can't lay claim to any even minor slice of that trauma, but like whatever. Like, I at least have been through a false alarm school shooting where for 3 hours in my life I believed one was going on my campus, and had to lock down, and that is hard enough. Like, it is a very weird, peculiar thing of modern life that is not just a cool thing to sprinkle in. Mm-hmm. One thing that's totally cool and a great line is when someone is trying to Instagram live Leatherface getting on the bus.
Oh god. Oh god.
And says, if you try anything, I'll cancel you, bro.
So this film's themes, I don't know how to describe it. It has thoughts about what is good and bad, and it's able to articulate some of those things. Gentrification's bad.
It doesn't know what gentrification is, but it knows that it's bad.
It does not know what gentrification, but it knows it's bad. Capitalism is bad. But again, I don't actually know if it knows what capitalism is.
Oh, yeah. No, they look at the ghost town and they're like, late-stage capitalism. That's something that people say on Twitter.
That's something people say on Twitter, and it's also like, isn't it more or less clear that this was not late-stage capitalism? This was like the Depression.
Yeah. An earlier stage, perchance.
It is a mid-stage
Yeah.
capitalism. And they don't like hipsters. And they know that hipsters have phones and say cancel culture. But I don't think they understand what cancel culture is in reference to.
No, it is a mystery. And this screenwriter, Chris Thomas Devlin, I don't know if he's a good screenwriter or not. This is his first credited screenplay.
Well, then I think I do know whether I believe him to be a good screenwriter or not.
Well, it's just like, anyone can.
It's not like his adaptation of War and Peace was really good, but then the Texas Chainsaw was a little bit of a downside. It's like, if you have one piece of evidence and it points you in a direction, I'm going to follow that evidence.
No, that's totally fair. But like, as far as how the WGA credits screenwriters, like, he could have had years and years
That's
of
fair.
punching up scripts.
That's really fair. That's true.
So it's hard to tell with writers, as far as credits go. But I do think there's something about the Texas Chainsaw franchise that makes otherwise capable people just rip their brains out and throw it out the window before typing anything. Even Kim Henkel, who wrote the first one, and not that the screenplay is the strong suit of the first one, but when he came back for part 4, it's just like, what the fuck? Anyway, yeah, the cancel you bro is a so bad it's good line for me, but it is so bad.
It is, as I said in, I believe, my Letterboxd post, it is an early contender for worst line of 2022.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of my favorite categories for an end-of-the-year wrap-up post. Another extremely brief tangent. There is a kind of Wishbox genie horror movie called A Wish Upon that I don't think you've seen.
I have seen Wish Upon. I have not reviewed
Got
Wish
it.
Upon.
Okay. Yes. But the guy in that movie says the immortal line, "Oh, you dig on multiverses?" And that's something that has lived in my brain for 7 years.
It's been a bit. It's been a few years at this point.
So lines like that really live on in perpetuity in the back of my brain.
For sure.
But let's talk about that ending gag where it briefly turns into a Tesla commercial and then is kind of fun.
It's an obvious thing to do, but I'm glad they did it. That the film ends on a shot of Leatherface pirouetting while swinging a chainsaw in the air.
Yeah. That's the thing, like, we're a sequel to the first one. We're going to do a lot of dumb references. Like, they had the kind of flashbulb noise when someone opened a thing of barbecue at one point.
They sure did.
Which, that's fucking stupid. But that's how you have to end a movie that's doing the thing that this one's doing, unfortunately.
Exactly.
But I do really enjoy, they're driving away in their convertible. They're showing us all of the amenities of the new Tesla. But then Leatherface grabs Mel, cuts her head off while the Tesla autopilot TM is driving Elsie Fisher away, and she can't do anything about it.
It's a combination of, oh, that's actually a cool way to incorporate this stupid feature in this useless car, along with, this is so dumb. This is such a dumb looking thing to have happen. Because it's like, for safety reasons, I assume they're not going full tilt, and also because they need to keep blocking the scene, so she needs to be able to see all this happening. So it almost looks like, you know how when you take your foot off the brake, the car idles forward at like 7 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour? It looks like that's the speed that they had it going at, and Elsie Fisher is like out of the top of the car screaming like a maniac. And it's so fucking dumb, but in a way that's like, okay, that's playfully dumb.
It is.
I'm on board with this specific incarnation of dumb.
Yeah, it is playfully dumb in a way that really gave me a shot of energy at the end.
No, it for sure did. And I think we haven't talked enough. I mean, for all that she's saddled with a really terrible arc, Elsie Fisher's going for it. Like, she's a good actress. We know this. We saw 8th grade. And she does the thing where she wants to impress people. She wants to have a career. She doesn't want to spend the rest of her life making direct-to-video Texas Chainsaw sequels in Bulgaria. So she's pouring herself into this character, and even in moments like this, she's like selling something, and I'm not quite sure what she's selling, but she's going for it, and that I think helps make this moment just kind of more energetic to watch.
Yeah, and even though her character is grim, at least from interviews and stuff, it seems like she genuinely had fun doing it too. And
how can you not? I would have a blast being on the set of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that definitely comes through. But yeah, that is a fun gag. I think that's all I got to say. Oh, the most perfect thing about this movie is that it's short as fuck.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. 73 minutes, 74 minutes and the credits are scrolling.
Yeah, it is. It's a glorious thing. Yeah,
It's so good.
like when I saw that it was listed at 83 minutes, I was like, fuck yeah. And then there's 9 minutes of credits and I was like, fuck yeah.
Pretty much.
There
No, I gotta love a tight movie. Especially a dumb movie, knowing that it only has X amount of audience goodwill and wrapping up before that goodwill has been tapped
Yes.
out. Always a good thing.
That's the smartest move that this movie makes. Did you see that there was a post-credit stinger scene on this movie?
I always sit through the credits, and there was a post-credit stinger, and it's very exciting. I look very forward to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 10.
No, I believe it will be
2,
called.
whatever they're
I
gonna call
believe it will be called Chainsaw Massacre.
That is one that we haven't had yet. That's a good point.
Or yeah, because Texas Massacre is not as good.
No, and Texas Massacre, Chainsaw is the sort of, it's the special
Yeah.
sauce of this franchise. Could potentially Texas Chainsaw 2D could be the title of the film.
It could be. Anyway, anyway, I think that's it. Is there anything else that is left to say about Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
You know, I think we both kind of know from each other's letterboxds, and by the time this episode goes live, I'll have a full review of the movie up. But just what we haven't landed on is, did you like the experience of watching it? Because it sounds like there were good things, there were bad things.
Yeah, for the most part, yes. And I don't think that necessarily pointing at dumb shit and going, what the fuck, is a bad experience for me.
Certainly not in this genre. And as I said sort of up top in the episode, it scratched an itch. I was like, you know what? It's just a dumb slasher movie, but it's one that it gives me the things I want a dumb slasher movie to have. A lot of gore, pretty well executed, pretty imaginative gore, short, and the final girl performance is pretty solid. And that's a good checklist for a slasher movie to have. I was on board with it. I had a good time.
Yeah, no, I'm totally there. I'm less. I don't know. I still have a little more complicated feelings about it in terms of like some of the bad stuff is quite bad, and I think on a rewatch I might be able to ignore it more because I know what I'm in for.
Yeah, like there's no getting around how just viscerally god awful the Sally Hardesty material is.
Yeah. I think I could turn it into camp in my brain eventually, but I am not there yet. Or in the same way of like I enjoy Halloween Resurrection as a dumb movie, but the opening scene with Jamie Lee Curtis is just flat out a mess.
I think if you enjoy Halloween Resurrection as a dumb movie, your ability to turn things into camp must be very refined, because I cannot even vaguely imagine being able to do so.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
Not with
I
that.
have a lot of practice. But yeah, so ultimately, yes, I like this movie. It's doing enough to justify its existence. In terms of the kind of recent franchise slasher boom that we have had, we've got the new Halloween, we've got the Chucky TV show, we've got Scream. This is probably the least of them, but altogether, it's a reasonably strong crop of movies overall.
It is. I will go even stronger. I will say that I enjoyed the experience of watching this film more than I enjoyed watching either reboot Halloween.
Okay, I would put this above Halloween Kills as a watch experience for sure.
For sure above Halloween Kills.
Yeah, and Halloween 2018 is a movie that frustrated me much more because there is a lot more to that legacy character.
Right.
But it does have a really good John Carpenter score.
It does, and I'm all about that. I guess for me, it is really down to like Halloween 2018 felt like it was ruining something, and Texas Chainsaw,
Texas Chainsaw done been ruined.
It been ruined. Again, this is a clear cut, not the worst Texas Chainsaw for me. I would probably rank it in the top half.
Okay.
Now it's been an age since I've seen some of these movies. I would very comfortably say that my two favorite Texas Chainsaws, and the only ones that I would say are actually good, are the two films called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so 74 and the 2003 remake. I don't know if I would say this is number 3. That seems high, but it's right up there with the best of the sequels, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I would put it about on a par with Texas Chainsaw 3D, which, like I said, is a movie that's stupid, but I do enjoy quite a bit.
Sure.
Like in terms of like is slick and shiny and modern and stupid.
Yeah.
I would say easily the prequel to the remake is worse than this.
For sure.
The Texas Chainsaw 4 and especially 3. 3 is the worst Texas Chainsaw movie. Or worse than this.
Yeah, I would say so 3, Next Generation, and the beginning are all comfortably worse than this.
Yeah, so it is at least in the middle. Like, I have a much stronger affinity for Texas Chainsaw 2 than you do.
This is many people.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So for me, it's 1 and 2, and then the remake. But this gets to live, like, right... This and Texas Chainsaw 3D are sandwiched right in the middle of, like, the 3 better ones and the 3 worst ones.
I like that.
And I
like
constantly forget about Leatherface, and I think that speaks to how I feel about Leatherface.
I have not seen Leatherface, although my intent is to do so by the end of 2022. So
Yes, I hope you do. I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say about it. I remember because I watched it and it just really didn't leave a big impression on me. But there is a great sequence where Lily Taylor slaps the shit out of a guy, which I do remember.
I mean, that is a feature that when I see it in a work of cinema or television, I'm always pleased that I saw it.
Yeah, so there's at least something you'll get out of it.
Good.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Next, we're rolling on into another month here, March 2022 for Bride of Alternate Ending. We are going to be covering, because the Oscars are happening this month, we're digging out the skeletons out of Oscar nominees' closets. This is something that we did in a way last year, but there were not enough people nominated who had done horror that we just kind of expanded it to any Oscar nominee. But this time, we are including on our slate for patrons to vote for, we're including a bunch of movies that were either directed by or feature performances from people who were nominated for Oscars this year. So if you're on the Patreon, look for that the last week of February. So it'll be up when this episode is up. And vote for your fave. I'm very excited for some of the options we have this time.
Definitely.
But yeah, until then, thank you so much for listening. I now include links to my Twitter and Instagram and Tim's Letterboxd in the show notes. So if you want to check those out, you can find those there. And also all the alternate ending social media materials are there as well. You can find more of Tim's reviews and my reviews on alternateending.com. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.